The following is a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. For more information, please visit our website at dallasgenealogy.org.
All right, and thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate that. And so glad to see you all this morning for our program. And I cannot be more thrilled to introduce to you our speaker today, Stephanie Bennett. And Stephanie grew up in Waxahachie, Texas, and left this great state to attend the University of Missouri, Columbia. She ended up back in Dallas with 2 earned degrees, but not really using them, in much to the dismay of her mother and father. But then she was listening to the radio and heard an advertisement on the radio about TWU's master's degree program. And Stephanie had always wanted to pursue a degree in library science. So this seemed like the perfect opportunity. And she set off for her career as a librarian. Now, Stephanie has been in the position here at the Erik Jonsson Central Library for the last 6 years? 6 years, okay. And she has done a fantastic job as the manager of the 8th floor genealogy department. Will you please help me welcome Stephanie Bennett?
Good morning. Thank you all so much for having me. I just wanted to remind you that if you like having a handout to follow along with, we do have handouts available at the table outside, but they'll still be there at the end if you want to pick one up. And we are going to be talking about one of our Dallas Public Library databases today, Fold 3. And you have access, anyone who is visiting the library today, you can access this database on our genealogy computers. So I'd like to welcome you all to the 8th floor after this session, and we'll be able to help you get started researching on Fold 3. So one of the most common questions I get asked is when I say, oh, Fold 3, you've got to check things out on Fold 3. People are like, well, what is Fold 3? So as we get started, Fold 3 is actually named for the traditional flag folding ceremony during which a 3rd fold is made to honor and remember veterans. And so I'm very excited to be talking to you about celebrating our veterans today, particularly with Veterans Day coming up. And we're going to be specifically talking about military records on Fold 3. So what kind of material is on Fold 3? Well, it is the top genealogical database for military records. It's a subscription-based website, just like Ancestry or other database websites that you can subscribe to, but you can actually access this for free with your Dallas Public Library card. So it's a great resource, and you can actually use it from home in your slippers and in the middle of the night, which is really when the best research happens, I find. I just updated this yesterday. It now contains over 596 million records of military and non-military resources. And while we're going to focus on the military aspect today, I am going to show you the non-military because I think they're cool too. Fold 3 actually partners with the National Archives and Records Administration, and this is really important because all of the military records for the United States are going to be with the National Archives. And the quickest way for the National Archives to have their records accessible is to actually make them available on a major database. And so having this partnership is what makes Fold 3 essential if you're doing any kind of military research. And Fold 3 is part of the Ancestry.com conglomerate. So a lot of the search functions that you see on Ancestry have been implemented into Fold 3. So if you're used to searching on Ancestry and kind of know the ins and outs of that, you're going to find Fold 3 pretty easy to use. I am excited to be talking Fold 3 with you today because, exciting announcement, Fold 3 is now part of TechShare's databases. And for those of you who are not familiar with TechShare, TechShare is actually a cooperative program. Libraries throughout Texas join together, and in this group, they say, we want to offer equitable database researchers or resources to all of the people who participate in this program. And so there is a set list of databases for those libraries. So it doesn't matter if you're in a small town library or a large library, you're going to be able to access the same database resources. And so this is a really great program. So when I say you can access Fold 3 with your Dallas library card, you can actually now access Fold 3 with your McKinney library card, and you can access it with your Rockwall library card. So definitely go back to your home library, look on their list of database resources. And if you know for sure they're a TechShare library, ask your library folks and say, have you added Fold 3 yet? And they should have that up. I know our web resources librarian has been working overtime because not only is Fold 3 added, but there are other Gale databases and EBSCO databases that are being provided as part of the new database list. So lots of new things coming from the library. And those of you who maybe have heard this program on Fold 3 that I've done before, I always get really excited to present this because there's always something new from Fold 3. I always learn something new when I'm putting together this program. And I think it's really important to stay up and aware of what's new, because I know so many times we may go, well, I've looked for this on Ancestry like 1,000 times and it's just not there. You never know when it's going to pop up. And the same for Fold 3 here. So I've added some new things. Don't worry. I did want to remind you, you may see this on your home library, but when you're logging in at Dallas Public Library, and you may be logging on from home, also in the middle of the night, you want to make sure that you're typing in your full library card number when it's asking for that barcode. I know that's a very common question I get asked. Why is it asking for a barcode? What is that? It's your library card number. So definitely file that away, because I'm maybe not going to be available in the middle of the night to tell you to put in your barcode. So we're talking today about military records on Fold 3. So we're going to go through some of the types of available records on Fold 3. We're going to talk about navigating the database and the special free account features. We're going to talk about using the search tools and refining your results. And then we're going to talk through printing and saving your sources. You would think that would be easy, but there are some nuances to it that we'll talk about. Okay, so first we're going to talk records. So many military records. You can actually go in and browse. The cool thing about Fold 3 is you can go in and browse by war or by conflict. It's going to cover the American Revolution through more recent conflicts. And each conflict has its own collection of records, and that's really important to remember as we go through. there are key collections for each conflict, and they're all going to be slightly different. So as we go through, be thinking of where you want to research and maybe make a little notation of things that I talk about and things to check out further. And know too that available records will vary depending on the conflict. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in later sections. So some of the key collections that you'll want to look for on Fold 3 are Revolutionary War service and pension records, War of 1812 pension files. So the whole pension files. I know there's been a group for years that have worked tirelessly in transcribing those pension files. And we're going to spotlight them in the next slides. There are Army registers from the beginning of the United States through about 1969. There are Civil War service records and widows' pensions for the Civil War. And then we have World War I and World War II draft registration cards. Those are essential for your World War I and World War II research. And then we have Navy muster rolls, starting with World War II and going through about 1971. And I designed this to where we look specifically at at a collection that may give you some more information about what exactly may be contained in the records. So I wanted to spotlight the pension records. So whenever you see pension records, it may contain a date and place of birth. It may contain a proof of marriages and property holdings. And then that'll include the names of the dependents in the family. So pension files are really going to look for proof that the person served in the war, and then proof that the person receiving the pension is related to the person who served. And what's really neat about that is it contains supporting documentation. So you may see discharge papers, you may see marriage and death certificates included. You may see physician reports of a person saying, you know, I am treating this person, they are unable to function right now, and they're going to need their pension. People actually even went through and they pulled out, as a librarian, I'm traumatized, but they pulled out pages of their family Bible to prove that they were related. And so you might even find that in there. But you'll also most commonly see testimonials from family members, neighbors, or other soldiers saying, you know, this person has lived here. I served with them in this unit of the war. They've lived here for such and such years, or I was there when they were married. It's just chock full of all that genealogical information that we want to see. So that's our little spotlight on pension records. But just keep in mind service records, muster list. We're going to see that a little bit later in our example. They all give important information that you shouldn't kind of pass over because you see, oh, it just says their name and their birth year. You really want to make sure that you're diving into that document and gleaning all the information that it has from it. So that's my little librarian section for you. I also kind of wanted to spotlight new collections because as I was going through preparing for this, I saw all these new things that have been added. And I think it's so important to kind of talk that through and see what we have available. So one thing that Fold 3 has really been working on is making military yearbooks and unit histories and cruise books available, particularly for the 20th century. So you'll find military yearbooks like this one that we have here for a station hospital. I loved seeing the Army Corps Army Nurse Corps here pictures here. It's like a yearbook that you would have in school, but they're in their uniforms and you know where they were stationed. It has names. I think this is so essential for incorporating this into your research. I'm so glad that Fold 3 has started to add these. And I think that they're definitely worth checking out. Do keep in mind that these are growing collections. They're not comprehensive right now, but I know that they're working really hard to make them comprehensive. One thing that I thought was really neat that somebody said when the 1950 census came out, and I believe it was Kurt Witcher, but he said, you know, the way to get folks and younger people particularly interested in the 1950 census and why that's so important is you show them the census, but you also show them a yearbook picture and you group those together, and the pictures are what grabs people because everybody went to high school for the most part, and everybody is familiar with that experience, and you pair those two things together and you connect that experience with their ancestor, and that is what keeps people researching and coming back for more information. So military yearbooks, I believe, are the same way because a picture is so important to connecting to the past. And so not only are there military yearbooks, but there's cruise books. So they would do a booklet whenever a ship launched with a new crew. So it would basically be like a scrapbook or a memory book of that particular cruise. And they would have, you know, yearbook type photos in it or like a full crew picture. So that's really important for those who are in the Navy. There are also support books for like engineering crews or support groups, supply ships and what have you. There are those kinds of yearbooks for those crews as well. One of the big things for 2022 that Fold 3 has also added are U.S. morning reports. And we're going to see what that looks like on the next slide. So I'm going to skip that. But there are also now World War I transport service and passenger lists for World War I and into World War II. And then Fold 3 has worked really hard with adding various unit histories when they can, when they're able to find them. So definitely, I realized that there might be, and we're going to see on the next slides, there might be some hesitation. Fold 3 doesn't have anything for World War I or World War II or the later, more recent wars. But I urge you to go back and check, and we're going to see how to check in the next slides. But I urge you to go back and see because you never know when you're going to find that great find. U.S. morning reports. So this collection right now is 1912 to 1939. It's going to eventually go through 1946, but it is a National Archives set of microfilm rolls. It hasn't ever been available outside of the St. Louis Personnel Center until it was digitized through Fold 3. It's 119 microfilm reels. It is, as you see here, it's going to have unit counts on the left side, and then what we call an exception-based report on the right side, where it says remarks. And so what this is they've done a report in the morning each day for the unit. They've done their unit counts, but on the right side, they've made notes about any exceptions. So soldiers' names are listed if they had a change of duty, if they were injured, if they were working with another unit, their name is going to be listed. So this is good for two reasons. First off, if you know your person's or ancestors' unit during World War I and into World War II eventually, you'll be able to tell when they were present in their unit by the numbers. So know that there's a morning report and they participated. If there is an exception, they're going to be listed in the remarks. So you can assume your person is fine each day until there might be an exception and they're listed there. So this is a great way to track World War I and World War II activity because it helps overcome our record loss. And we're going to talk about record loss on our next slide here. So the important thing, and I've kind of babbled about it a little bit, but we'll talk about it again because we have the official slide, is you really want to learn about what kinds of records are publicly available for the time period you're researching. And you can do this through browsing Fold 3 and doing your online research. Personally, I really like using the Family Search Research Wiki. I can't tell you enough good things about it. Because it just lays it out cohesively for the researcher. I kind of think of it as a brief tutorial if you aren't necessarily sure and don't want to ask questions. The Research Wiki is the great place to go to. And the reason we want to do this is because some military personnel files, most of World War I and World War II, were actually destroyed by a fire at the Personnel Record Center in 1973. So there's a significant record loss there. When you are looking for 20th century military service records, and particularly those service record personnel files, these are not going to be available online through Fold 3. They actually need to be requested from the National Personnel Records Center. And you can actually take a look at that through archives.gov. This is the archives.gov website, and I've clicked on veteran service records because we're interested in getting the records of veterans. And what it says here is that most veterans and their next of kin can obtain a DDI Form 214, which is a report of separation, and other military records listed below. So you can do a request online, you can mail or fax a form, however you'd like to do it. You do have to go through the process of requesting those 20th century records that exist though. But you can do some kind of cool other things as well. I have one staff member who was able to get replacement medals for their grandfather. And they proved that they were the next of kin and said that those medals didn't exist anymore. And so they were able to get those medals and commemorate their ancestors' military service. So know that there are some neat things that you can do through the National Archives. One thing I will urge is a little bit of patience. I do have a staff member who is trying to get records for, I think, their great uncle, and have been waiting a little bit. So know that they're working as fast as they can, but have a little patience. All right, so now we're getting through to the actual Fold 3 database part. And we're going to navigate around here and see how to browse for those records and find the things that are on Fold 3. The first thing that you see when you pop up is onto Fold 3 is a search function. And you can really type whatever you want into that search. It gives you the chance to search for a name, a type of record, a place, a date. And so if you know what you're going to, this is a quick way to get about it, but we're going to explore a little bit more for the purposes of this session. But no, it's there. I know it's there. One thing that we're not going to talk a lot about today are the international records that are available, but I wanted to call your attention to it really quickly. Fold 3 is, while primarily the United States, does have records for Australia, for Canada, for New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. There are court-martial records, registers for the UK. There are Navy lists and World War I diaries. Such cool collections. And if you have any ancestors who served internationally, it's a great resource to check out. I also wanted to call your attention to the fact that Fold 3 does have specific African American history collections and Native American history collections. I also, you missed it, but on Tuesday I did a presentation on Native American records, and there are handouts still upstairs if you would like to get one. So definitely keep that in mind if you're coming upstairs to use Fold 3. Fold 3 has great Native American resources, particularly if you have Native American ancestry in this particular area for DAWS enrollment and land allotment for Oklahoma. There are also non-military records. Real quick, you can click this button right here, and you can find census records, city directories, naturalizations, some newspapers, passport applications, and various photo collections and vital records. Double check through here, look at the publications that may be listed. Some of these things really actually work to supplement the military records. For instance, there might be a naturalization for a person who served in the military. I have a great uncle who was not a citizen and served in World War I, and that's how he was able to earn his citizenship, is through military service. So a lot of these collections complement the military records that are there. And if you'd like to take a look at all the collections that Fold 3 has, there's a little button at the bottom that says see all the titles, and you can actually go through the 594 million records in different collections. But it is really interesting. You can see just the very specific collections that they have available. So there's a list of airmen who died in the Great War, and I bet that's probably going to be out of the UK, and different things that you may never know are there unless you go and look for them. So I urge you to do that. For our spotlight and navigation, we're going to take a look at Revolutionary War records. And I urge you, if you're interested in a particular conflict, again, to use this browsing process, see what's available for each conflict. And it's going to give you a lot of resources that you may not know about. Okay, so I've clicked on the Revolutionary War. You can use the search function at any time and start searching. So if I put in a name here, it's only going to search the Revolutionary War records. But let's dive a little deeper. Let's take a look at the different publications that may be listed. And we can do that through clicking on this publication tab or clicking where it says see all. So I've clicked in and I've made my selection. This is the publications right here are actually going to list more than all kinds of different records. So publications are going to be the Pennsylvania Archives. For Revolutionary War records, it's going to have service records. It's going to have pension records. It's going to have vouchers and final payment records, all kinds of different things. So browse through those, figure out what you may want to browse through more. I've picked Revolutionary War service records here. It's going to give an overview of what you may find in the record and some example records. It's going to give you a description. This particular description was done by certified genealogist Craig Scott, and it really gives you some in-depth information about why the records were created, how to use them, and how to go about using this for your research. So I urge you to check that out if you want even more information. Oh, here's the rest of the list of the publications. So you'll also have state militia records, Continental Congress papers, George Washington's personal correspondence when he was general of the forces, and much, much more. This is just a brief list, and it actually has 23 million records. All right. So I've picked the Revolutionary War service records. This is what pops up for me. It's going to break this out by state, then by regiment, and then by individual. I really love this browse feature because it keeps narrowing your search down. And it's a good way to figure out what the collection is as a whole and work in that collection to really narrow down to get to what you want. I know some people really don't like this column layout. One of my colleagues is just like, I don't get it, but I really like it. And I urge you, if you like diving into collections, use this. It's really neat because each column section narrows your browsing further. But keep in mind, like if you get to something that you don't know, like for instance, if you don't know your, your person may have served out of Connecticut, but you don't know what regiment, you can just click Connecticut and then type in your person's name and it'll bring it up. You don't have to keep going and drilling down with the column section. While that's fun, it may not be the most efficient use of your time. So I've actually just continued to go through the columns because I like columns, and continuing to narrow down your browsing will eventually take you to an image record set. So here is Peter Adams' Revolutionary War service record. And we can see from this view, it's actually going to be 5 pages. And you can click on each page and see the information that's included in his service record. At any point, if you get to the point where the point of no return, where you're like, I don't know where to go next, you can, of course, go back and start over again. Maybe you've gotten down to this list right here and you're not finding your ancestor. Go back and try maybe another regiment or another unit. So columns, neat, not for everybody. That's my summation of that. But definitely use the publications feature and see what the publications are that comprise the collection. That's the most important part. I did also want to point out that Fold 3 has help. It's not just me here. They've actually done their official Fold 3 training center, and you can get a lot of different tutorials and things if you're getting stuck and you're not finding what you need. Fold 3 has a great help button that you can get a little help with. The next thing that we're going to browse through is the War Stories collection. And War Stories is uniquely about the Civil War. It used to be named CW War Stories, and they've renamed it. It's just War Stories. But know that it's Civil War. And what they've done, this is very cool, they've made pages for Civil War battles and Civil War regiments. And so this actually really divides out and gives you a history on each battle, each regiment, and really helps you drill down to see where your ancestors served and what battles they may have participated in. So we're going to see an example. I chose the Battle of Peachtree Creek. It's going to give you some quick battle facts. It's going to let you know how many troops, how many casualties, how many wounded. It's going to give you a history of that unit or that battle and what happened. But the really cool thing that has just been added is not only could you, before you could see actually the regiments that served in this battle. So you could always go and see and say, well, I know what regiment my person was in. I've researched my records. I know that this regiment and this company was in this battle. But now you can actually break it down by the soldiers' names. So they've taken all the lists of the soldiers and the regiments, and now you can actually put in your ancestor's name here and see that they served in the Battle of Peachtree Creek. And I think that's just so cool. It's a great way to figure out specifically and say, my ancestor was in this particular battle. So all you have to do is just type in their name. It's super cool. They've also added images, and I've done my lecture on images and how important they are, but this kind of brings this battle to life, and there's a historical marker. There are photographs from that time period. There are even some maps included that really help you recreate that and put yourself in that ancestor's shoes. Now we're going to talk memorials, which are just, I think they're the coolest part of Fold 3. So I'm excited to share this with you today. So Fold 3 has memorial walls, which you can actually create a page for your ancestor to memorialize and honor their service. You can search and see if there is a page already created for your relative. And then there are also interactive memorials for USS Arizona that sank at Pearl Harbor, of course. And then there's also a Vietnam memorial wall that's virtual. So you don't actually have to visit the wall in DC. There's a virtual wall that you can honor your veteran on. And the way that you actually are able to create a memorial for your ancestor is you do have to sign up for a free Fold 3 membership. And with that Fold 3 membership, you can, of course, create the memorials, but it gives you some additional options with printing and saving images that we're going to go through. And you can also save things to your ancestry family tree. So I went ahead and I created a memorial page for my grandfather, and I'm going to kind of walk you through how I did that. So my grandfather was Billy Clyde Jonsson. It does say World War II, but he actually was not old enough to be in World War II. He and my grandmother, who's pictured there, actually went to Forest Avenue High School here in Dallas. Met at the old Forest Theater, and were just so in love that at 17 and 16, they ran off to New Mexico, got married, and then went to California, where he lied about his age and joined the Navy. And that was in 1946, so right after World War II ended. While it says World War II, the records are from the World War II era, which is why it's grouped this like that. But this is a great way to collect and share what you know and memorialize, your veteran and remember them, particularly at this time of year. So here are some things that you can do. You can add records from Fold 3 or Ancestry, and we're going to see the record that I added from Fold 3 in a second. You can add facts. So I've gone through and I've added his birth date, his death date, and marriage date. And hopefully you've verified those with sources. But you don't have to necessarily. I was able to add a photo that I had of him in his uniform. And you can also add stories, which are a great thing to do to share your memories of that person. So what I actually added was a World War II Navy muster roll from Fold 3. And if we take a look at it, you know, we're very quick to say, oh, it just lists his name and that he served. But I wanted to say that there are some additional things on here which I didn't see initially that I'm hoping that you can see more quickly than I did. So it'll have their full name. It'll have their service number and rank, which is important, particularly if you're trying to get their military service record. They're going to want that service number and rank. So this is a way to get that. It's going to have the ship that they served on for that muster roll. It's also going to have their enlistment date and the date they were first received on board. And the other thing to keep in mind is that they're going to have fellow shipmates. So you're going to know who that they served with. So I was able to take this and add that to my memorial page, and that's the basis for his military service right now. Now, there are a couple things that I have done and will continue to do. I'm going to continue to look for that cruise book to be added. I didn't find him in the current ones. And I'm going to, you may, I don't really feel the need to, but you could get his military personnel record, perhaps from the National Archives. Other things that I've gone through and added are, I went ahead and looked up the ship that he served on. And this is a picture of that I was able to find online and add. And again, that picture really brings it to life. This was actually a vessel that was part of D-Day. And this is a picture from D-Day, I believe. So that was really interesting. I didn't know that. And you can also, Ancestry just actually released their colorized version of their color feature, where you can go in and take a black and white photo and it makes a color. And so I actually went in and colorized this particular picture, and it turned out really great. So there's always new things to add or think about adding to your memorial. There are always more pieces of the story. One thing to keep in mind, though, is anytime you upload data or media to Fold 3, you are granting the website the perpetual right to reuse the material. So, for instance, if they wanted to do an ad and feature your family, they could do so. So always just kind of read that agreement before you upload photos and stories and make sure you're okay with that. Another thing that you can use with your free profile is something called your gallery, and it's a new feature. And I'm still getting used to it myself, and I'll show you why in a second. So when you go to your gallery, it's going to bring up all the recent records that you've looked at. And so you're able to go back to things that you maybe looked at before very quickly. It also groups anything that you upload or anything that you bookmark into specific categories that they've created so that you can get to them easily again. So if I had bookmarked something like a battle, it would be under battles. If I had uploaded the image of the ship that I just showed you, that's in the images folder. So it's just a way to kind of organize the information that you are excited about. But what is really interesting is there are bookmarks and self-created tags. Bookmarks are going to be a quick way to save information to look at later, like a physical bookmark. I'm going to put a bookmark in a book to see later, but in this case, it's a record that I want to go back to. And believe me, preparing presentations, I really need to use these bookmarks more. Tags are a way to organize and group your research how you want. You can actually add multiple tags to each piece. So I always deal with family research, and I like to group my records by family. So I've created a tag called the Harris family, and I know what that means, but you may not know what that means. I'm tracking my Harris family Native American research in that section. But you may use this for all kinds of different purposes. One suggestion was to actually track battles. So to make a tag for all the battles that your ancestor fought in. Or another idea would be to do a tag for all of your memorials that you've created. Really, the sky's the limit. It's what you think about in your head for organizing your Fold 3 records. It's really easy to add a bookmark or a tag. Here is this is actually a Dawes Rolls record. But this is a packet for William Harris, and this is my Harris family tracking. If you see in the yellow, there are two unique little features there. The first one is a tag. It looks like a tag, and you can click that feature and add this particular file. I'm going to add that to my Harris family tag. And then the bookmark, I can just bookmark that for later. So it's super easy to do, and I don't know if you're like me, but I definitely need to do this more. We're going to talk about how to search and customize your Fold 3 results. We finished the browsing. Now we're going to go to searching. And we'll say really quickly here, if you don't know who to search for, say you're in the search screen and you have an ancestor you don't know. I've never heard of any military service in my family. I just don't know where to go. This is intimidating. If you have an ancestor who is about the right age at the time of a military conflict, it doesn't hurt to search. I did this cool little chart here. Thank you, Patty, for the suggestion of birth years for veterans. So surely you have a male ancestor who was alive between 1726 and 1767 for the Revolutionary War. That might give you a name to start searching with. And so consider each conflict here as you're going through, and figure out who in your family you might search for. And this is also going to be in your handout, so you have it to take home. You may also say, well, I've searched for my direct ancestor. They aren't here. I know they did not serve. And I would advise, look for your brothers, uncles, cousins, neighbors. They may give you clues and insights into what life was like for your direct ancestor. I really enjoy, part of what excites me about genealogy is recreating what life was like for our female ancestors. And what's interesting for me to look at is looking at all the members of the family and seeing, okay, well, this is my Civil War female ancestor. What was life like for her? How many of her brothers went and fought in the Civil War? And how did that affect her with, her brothers being gone, and imagining what things that she might have had to do on the farm in order to compensate for, the family being away. Or if there was unfortunately a death in military service. One of my ancestors in particular lost a brother in the Civil War, and then she went in, she was able to go later and name her own child after that deceased brother. So that must have affected her if she's honoring her brother in that way. So being able to recreate that family group, know what life might have been like for them, that's really important to search for those folks as well. But also keep in mind that if you're looking at pension records and what have you for people, friends and neighbors, you can also maybe have a relative who's mentioned in a pension application. Maybe they were one of those people providing a testimonial as next of kin or a neighbor, or mentioned in some various correspondence. It's definitely worth broadening that search and looking for all the key people in that fan group. So back to the search, you can actually go in and use this filter, and you can customize and narrow your search. And you can pretty much, it has so many different search functions that you can look at. I usually start with a name search, but you can start with a place, you can start with specific military records, you can continue to add different filters to the search. And we're going to see an example because I know that that wasn't clear in just a second. Some different filters that you might not know that you can add are military branch, their service number, conflict, particularly like I can pick World War II, I can pick World War I, you can pick their rank, and then you can use those filters to search specific collections, like a publication name, like Revolutionary War service records, War of 1812 pensions, and that might be helpful in narrowing your search down. And so this is the search that I started. This is a great grandfather that I'm searching for. His name is George Knowles, and I've typed in that I want to search for George Knowles by name. And so that's what's showing up right here. So George Knowles, while not the most common name in the world, it's not Smith. And that brought up a lot of people that I know are not my guy. So I'm going to look for a way to narrow that down a little bit more. And I'm going to look for George Knowles in Texas. So I'm going to, this is a screenshot of me typing in Texas, and then gives you all these suggestions. So I've chosen Texas, United States of America, place. Okay, so that still brought up a bunch of different George Knowles. So know that when you do a search, you can actually narrow it down even further. You can pick a conflict, you can pick a publication, all these things that we just went to. And what I ended up doing, I will show you, is I actually added a birth year here at the top. I know that he was born in August 1905, so I've added that into my search. And that's now given me 2 search results that I know are my George Knowles. So know that if, for instance, I wanted to look for something that doesn't say August 1905, I can immediately say, oh, I don't want that in my search, and use that little close feature and take that away. But for our purposes, we are going to use these 2 records to take a look at. One thing to kind of advise you as you're going through with your searches, you want to include pieces of information like I have just now, but not everything you know. You don't want to put in birth and death date and everything that you know about the person, because every piece of information that you add to the search reduces the number of results that you receive. So for instance, if I added the death record there, it would not have brought up his World War II draft registration card because it, of course, doesn't have his death date. So you want to vary the amount of information that you add when you search. And definitely, unless you want a death record, don't include a death date, for instance. And then again, when you're searching for something specifically, go directly to the collection or title of interest and search within that collection. So if I'm looking for World War II yearbooks, I want to go into the yearbook records specifically and search just that section. And that way I know when it doesn't come up, or if it does come up, I know that I'm searching what I want to search. Also consider different alternative spellings and names. You'll find this maybe not with the 20th century records, but you'll find this with some Revolutionary War, War of 1812, definitely Civil War, that not everybody is going to spell Knowles correctly. People are going to use abbreviations. So you want to know all those variations, spellings, and nicknames. Fold 3 does allow a wildcard search with an asterisk. If you're not finding what you need, you can say, well, I don't know how this is going to be spelled, put in a little wildcard, but make sure to use at least 2 characters before or after that wildcard. The best way to illustrate this is I have a Kinnaman family that I research, and no matter what you do, all the vowels are always in different places. And so what I do is I do a search with just the K's, the N's, and the M's, and the other N, and I just put asterisks in for the vowels, and that pretty much brings up everything that I need and more. So it's something to consider, particularly if you're looking at older records. Okay, now we're going to look at that World War II draft card that we just searched for and really dive into what we can do with that record. And I'd like to point out, when I was a baby researcher, this came up for me on Ancestry, and I was just like, okay, this is not helping me get back to the next generation. I'm going to add it to my tree and go on my way. But if you actually take a look at this, this is going to tell you where my great-grandfather lived in Dallas. It's going to tell you what he did. It's going to tell you his wife. And it actually has his signature there. And I, baby researcher that I was, I just passed this over, but it's a treasure trove. So definitely go back and look at your draft registration cards if you haven't already. Okay, so this is my search back to George Knowles in Texas, August 1905. And I'm going to take a look at that draft registration card here. Okay, and we just saw it. You can search for specific things on the image. This might be good, particularly if you have a big file of things to get to what you need. You can use this little I at the bottom of the page to get the full transcription and the source information on the side here. You can also add corrections. For instance, we had, it says employer Knowles Food Store without the E. So you can submit a correction for that because obviously something got messed up somewhere. So you can submit that. This might be good too if something's misspelled or transcribed incorrectly. You can also add or annotate content. So I can add a label or transcribe a record using this annotate button to make it easier for others to find. So an example that I might do is to add a little annotation that Lucian, it says L-U-C-I-N, and it usually has an A. So I might say, I've also seen it spelled L-U-C-I-A-N. You can also add comments to the record and discuss the record or add your thoughts. So like, for instance, I might go in and say, 4301 Oakland is now a different street name. I might go in and add that content. And then with the annotation, this is me saying that the transcription of Noel's Food Store, as we just saw, was incorrect. And so I can submit a note about that here as well through the annotation feature. So a lot of really cool things that Fold3 lets you do that maybe you didn't know about, or you went in to download, what have you. And so adding this content is really important because it's a way to help other people find this more easily. And lastly, I wanted to point out this little microfilm icon at the bottom of the page. A lot of people maybe miss that as they're going through because, again, baby genealogist, I go in, I download, move on to the next thing. But when you're looking at this World War II draft registration card, it brings up the microfilm reel, and it shows you that not only do I have this page, but there is a second page, y'all. So there is a second page to these draft registration cards, and this actually has a physical description where it's going to have height, weight, race, complexion, even strangely. But it also includes any other physical characteristics that will help you maybe if you never met this ancestor, or are just interested in visualizing that person. Maybe you don't have a photo. It's going to provide a physical description here. So keep that in mind when you're doing that research. Okay, now we're going to quickly talk about saving records. I know we love that green button that saves to Ancestry. And you can actually connect this to your tree if you have a tree on Ancestry. The thing to remember, particularly if you're using this through the library, is it's going to save the link to the image, but it's not going to save the image itself. So for instance, if I'm on my Ancestry tree and I'm not logged in through the library, it's not going to take me back to that image. It's going to tell me you have to, here's this link, but you can't view it. So that's not the most, the greatest way to get back to what you've saved. So if you want to save a Fold3 image to your Ancestry tree, the best thing to do is download the image to your computer and then upload that image to your tree. And that way you have the image, you can refer back to it very quickly. So to save the image, we're all familiar with this little toolbox icon. You're going to go to that tool icon and you're going to select download, and then it's going to give you the option to save the entire image or a portion of the image. That's your own choice. It'll sometimes give you options of how you want to save the file, whether you want an image file or a PDF. Again, that's up to you. I usually do an image file. I find that easier to navigate, but you might also want PDF for various reasons. The thing to keep in mind though is, even though this is 2 pages, I'm going to have to do this process for each page if I want both pages. So it's not going to download the whole file. And what's going to get us in trouble here is when you get to these big packets of pension information that we're going to see right here. So if a file is under 50 pages, you're going to have to download it page by page. Yes, that's a kicker. I heard a groan in the audience. However, when you're logged in, You've got to log into that free account. If it's over 50 pages, you can actually download the entire file. This little icon will pop up and say entire file, and you say, yes, I definitely don't want to download 54 pages or 86 pages individually. And then it'll give you this little piece here, and you'll be able to download that whole file. It will only download as a PDF, just FYI. This is what it's going to look like when you download it. It's going to download you the entire file as a PDF. It's going to, fit it to the page. And that image size isn't editable. So you can't say, oh, well, if I put it landscape, it would be bigger. And that's what I would prefer. It's just going to give it to you straight and fitted when you download that entire file. So you may want to go back and download individual pages as you see them for better clarity. It's up to you, but that's just what it looks like. And then when you go into print, you're again going to that tool icon and you're selecting printing either the entire image or the portion of the image. And that again is going to give it to you with it in portrait mode rather than landscape. But the cool thing is that it does also list source information, which is good for retaining records and going back to what you need. All right, and that's what I've got for you today. Today we learned about military records on Fold 3. We talked about browsing and navigating the database and checking each conflict to see the cool things that are listed there. We talked about using search tools and how to kind of refine your results when you're searching. And then we talked about printing and saving. And I'd like to invite you all up to use our genealogy computers and play around with Fold 3. But you can also visit us. We are open Tuesdays through Saturdays during the week. And we'd love to see you and help you with your family history research. Thank you so much for having me today. Does anybody have any questions?
Stephanie, we had one online. Somebody wanted to know if there's any restrictions to the Fold 3 that he can access through the library.
There are no restrictions to the Fold 3 that you can access through the library. I'm trying to think. I know that there is a add-on that you can get with a library ancestry subscription. This is not that. This is the full Fold 3 on all the TextShare databases that you have available. So it's the full Fold 3 at all those thousands of libraries. The other thing that they may be talking about as far as restrictions is if you are accessing our Fold 3 from home, that is only for Dallas Public Library card holders, but hopefully your home library has access now through TextShare as well. So that would solve that problem.
And then one more online question. Is there still a requirement that you must prove you're a direct relative in order to get military records from archives.gov?
Yes, there are some restrictions through archives.gov for records. You do have to prove that you are the next of kin. And generally, you also have to prove that that relative has passed. So probably you would submit a death certificate and perhaps a birth certificate of yourself to prove that you are that person's next of kin.
Stephanie, thank you so much. I love how organized your program is. And I just have a quick testimony to share after her last program on Fold 3. I went back to Fold 3 to see if there was any new information on my third great grandfather from the War of 1812. And there was 152-page PDF on there with the pension inquest that was done for his fourth wife. Evidently, somebody shared that he never divorced the third wife, that he left back in Arkansas, and he went back and married the fourth wife in Alabama, which was where he was from. So included in all that documentation was all the names and ages of birth, death of his former wives, which one of them was my third great grandmother. So I was able to pinpoint where she died from that record and when she died. And I did not have that information previously. So going back to research on sites is very valuable. And I learned that from you. And I just thank you for what you shared today.
Thank you for sharing too. That's such a great story. I love that.
Brooke Snyder would like to know if Fold 3 includes Texas Revolution information.
No, it does not at this time. I know that Family Search has Texas Revolution information, particularly pension records, and I don't think that they have service records, but definitely they have the pension records. So that's a great resource to go to.
Stephanie, does non-military, could that include civil service like during World War II?
Yes, it actually does. And the Civilian Conservation Corps as well. Yeah, so definitely check that out.
And that seems to be it for the online questions.
Stephanie, you were most recently talking about the draft registration cards. One thing I love to do is when you're looking at those cards, go to the second page and look at the description and then think about the descendants of that person. And I know in several instances, I'll look and I'll see that that descendant is a spitting image of the person that registered.
Yes, how cool.
Oh, do we have any veterans in the audience?
Do we have
Is there
any?
anybody online?
There's a little feature that you can use online to raise your hand virtually if you are a veteran.
Well, happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. I'll let Jim close us out. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, both online and in person. And be sure to check out our events calendar on our website for what's coming up the next month. And I hope to see you all at the Lakewood branch of the library in the Gaston and Abrams neighborhood. And we'll be the same time there next month. And so everybody have a good afternoon.
This has been a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. If you're already a member, thank you. Your fees have been supporting these and other society activities. If you're not yet a member, please consider joining now. Go to dallasgenealogy.org and click on the membership tab.